Everyone. Good evening. My name is Carl Granrath. I'm the hearing examiner for tonight's hearing. The purpose of the hearing tonight is to allow me to receive evidence and testimony on the matters that are pending. And from this, that'll create the record for this application. And after tonight's hearing, I will write a recommendation that will be forwarded to city staff within 2 weeks and then be sent along to your county commissioners, who will ultimately make the decision on this application. Generally speaking, the process for tonight is going to be, we're going to hear from staff who's going to introduce the project. As you can see the PowerPoint, and give an overview of that. And then the applicant will have an opportunity to present as well. The applicant has 30 minutes, up to 30 minutes to make their presentation. After that will be the opportunity for public comment. Each person who signed up or may be connected via Zoom has up to 5 minutes. When we call you up, and we'll do this when we get there, have you come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. And then I just ask that you direct any testimony or comments towards me, not anyone else in the audience or anything like that. Then after the public testimony is over, then the applicant has an opportunity to answer questions or provide rebuttal testimony, anything like that. And they have up to 15 minutes after the public testimony to do that. So that's our general procedure for tonight. Any questions or anything else before we get started? Okay. All right, Mr. Finkel.
Good evening. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. This is a request, case number CUP 24-0011 by Kootenai County Solid Waste Department and their consultant, Jacobs Engineering, for the expansion of the existing landfill. The landfill is currently under the designation of a public utility complex facility, so the request is to expand an existing public utility complex facility, to be more accurate. Before I get into the specifics of this request, I'd like to state that our department has engaged in multiple meetings with the Solid Waste Department, starting back from the records show in 2017. The county had an initial meeting with the department and their staff to discuss the process and the details of what it would entail to go through this review for the expansion of the existing landfill. And since then, we have had, as I stated, multiple meetings so that both our department and Solid Waste had sufficient information and we're comfortable moving forward in this process to address all of the requirements from state, local, and federal agencies. The subject property, as many know, is located in the southwest quadrant of Kootenai County. To be more precise, north of the intersection of Fighting Creek Road and Highway 95. The subject property, as you can see on the Google overlay, does have a significant amount of slope. It has rolling hills, it has some flat areas, it has some vegetated forested area here, as well as some more rolling hills with less vegetation, but predominantly the development has occurred more or less on the northern portion of the subject site at this time. The request is to create an additional cell to the south of the existing facility in this area. This is not exact, but in the proximate location. The property as currently proposed consists of 490.5 acres. A majority of the property is zoned rural, and only a couple of parcels that were recently added to the project site are located in the agricultural zone adjacent to Fighting Creek Road. The comp plan designation for the large portion of this property is scenic, and the remaining portion is currently designated as country. Some of the background on this application or the history of this landfill. In 1989, the Board of County Commissioners approved a landfill consisting of 435 acres, of which 40 acres were designated for the landfilling operation. In 1999, the applicant, Solid Waste, submitted an application to expand the existing facility to approximately 446 acres. So they added additional 11 acres or so, but they added from 40, they added 69 additional acres of the property to their landfilling operation. With the current proposal, the lateral expansion would, the request would be to make a number of improvements, including the modification of the existing west cell, as well as the construction of the south cell. With that, the applicants want to add additional parcels. The map of the existing parcels and those that are requested to be part of this application are included as exhibits for review in the staff report, which I'm sure you have looked at. But as a result, they are adding additional 88 acres to the landfilling portion of the facility, and the total landfilling area will now constitute approximately 197 acres in size. The primary goal of the proposed expansion is to, or the primary purpose of the expansion is to increase the overall waste storage capacity to provide cost-efficient solid waste management for Kootenai County residents. And according to the life cycle that the applicant has conducted extensive analysis on, the existing operation, which was approved in the most recent decision in 2000, will be at capacity in approximately 17 years in 2042. With this proposed expansion, they estimate that they would have an additional 9.27 cubic yards, 9.27 million cubic yards of storage area for waste, and it would extend the life of the facility by approximately 10 years to 2052 at the current growth rate of 5%. So this is the proposed site plan that the applicants have submitted. You have the original cell, and then you have the east cell that I believe were part of the original or the 1989 decision. And then you have the west cell expansion that took place in 2000. And the current request, as I mentioned, is to create this larger area that's called the south cell and modify the existing west cell to better integrate with the south cell so that they have more capacity. That is what has been presented to us by their consulting engineer. Staff has done an inspection last fall, and Solid Waste Department was kind enough to show us around so that we get a better sense. Sometimes having the visual aspects of the site analyzed gives us a better sense on how to address certain concerns if they do arise from agencies or the public. These are some of the photos that we have. Some of them were taken by staff at a site inspection. Some of them were provided by the applicant. These photos on the bottom are looking predominantly north into the facility from Fighting Creek area. These are some of the photos that we took from the interior roads where the existing landfill operation is, as well as where they have these stormwater ponds and other facilities, ancillary facilities for the overall operation. During the research and analysis conducted by the applicant's engineer, they put together a very comprehensive wetland delineation report, and they identified some wetlands on the property that will be within the geographical area of the proposed south cell expansion. I believe there is a total of 4, and in review of the wetland delineation report, they advise us that they will in fact have some impacts to those that will need to be mitigated, and they're very much aware of the fact that they would need to comply with the federal regulations that are under the review of Army Corps of Engineers. They would have to apply for a 404 permit, which they advised us on early on in the process. In fact, that has been confirmed by the local rep for the Army Corps of Engineers. And that response is included in the report as well as in the exhibit attached to the report. The applicants have also done a cultural resources analysis to determine if in fact there would be any impacts to those sites that are considered to be of historical significance. And they, in my review of their chart that they provided, they identified at least 13 potential sites that would have would be identified as part of historical site and have some benefit to the Coeur d'Alene tribe potentially. They did conclude that none of those sites were within the project area itself where the proposed expansion is being proposed. And so they did not provide any mitigation factors if those were to be, if they did find them, they would have to provide appropriate mitigation measures. But because it was determined that none were to be impacted, they really didn't provide any mitigation. Based on the communication that they had with the Coeur d'Alene Tribe Historic Preservation Officer, in 2021, the tribe determined that there were no impacts to historical sites. However, as you know, in the record, we have received, as of last week, a letter that perhaps there are some adverse effects based on the proposal as presented today. The tribe does state that there's been some changes which they didn't address or elaborate on the specifics of that, and the applicant advised us that they did not provide any changes in the last 4 years to their overall design. Furthermore, the applicant has done an endangered species report, and they have evaluated the property in question and determined that there would be no effects to the endangered species or the critical habitat based on the geographical boundaries of the proposed south cell expansion. During the agency comment period, we did have responses from numerous local, state, and federal agencies, and we found that a majority of them were consistent with the previous determination in 2000, consistent with those requirements that would make the applicant mitigate environmental impacts and so forth. Most of the recommendations are included in the report. We have also included some of the conditions of approval that were imposed in the 2000 decision because we find that those conditions do have it's a necessity to retain them while the facility is in operation, so they should be there for the life of the landfill. One of the concerns that was brought up later or at the end of the comment period was from the tribe. They did raise a number of concerns regarding groundwater, wetlands, stormwater runoff, air quality, structural implications with the proposed facility, surface water, water rights, public health, impacts to wildlife, and burden on or the effects on the historical sites. We communicated with the applicant and they have provided a compliance metrics, not only with the conditions that are currently in place, but also to the key concerns that were brought forward by the tribe. We find that the applicant provided sufficient evidence to say that some of the concerns they find have either been mitigated or will be mitigated with the proposed expansion, or some of them, they find that they may not be valid. Maybe there's a miscommunication or misunderstanding between solid waste and the tribe's review of the application. So they were very clear with us that the conditions we imposed in the staff report should sufficiently mitigate the impacts associated with their request. I have reached out to the tribe to speak with the individual who is the Historic Preservation Officer, and to get a little bit more insight as to what aspects of the latest application seem to be different from their 2021 review. I left a voice message, and unfortunately, I have not received a response as of today. So we don't have a clear indication or information with regards to what impacts, or excuse me, what has changed and how it may have an impact on the historical sites that are of importance to the tribe. Let me see. One of the things I failed to address is that while the subject property is located adjacent to the Coeur d'Alene tribe boundaries, res boundaries, it's not within the reservation. So I want to be clear that it's adjacent to it, but it's not within the geographical boundaries of the Coeur d'Alene reservation. But as a courtesy, we felt that it was imperative that we did solicit comments from them, because the applicant has engaged on multiple levels with them to review the potential environmental impacts and other impacts that this facility may create that are important to the tribe. So having said all this, we received only 2 comments in support of this application. In staff analysis and recommendation, we find that the existing facility and the proposed expansion are an integral part of the Kootenai County Public Services. The expansion will provide additional years of storage capacity through at least 2052 at a rate of 5% growth. The Coeur d'Alene tribe stated that the proposed scope of work change from 2021 will have an adverse impact on historical sites, but did not elaborate on the details. Therefore, it's unclear how staff can impose the conditions of approval and how the applicant may be able to mitigate them. The applicant has provided to the Coeur d'Alene tribe's concerns a response that they are currently or will be in compliance with all local, state, and federal regulations. The latest conditions of approval in the staff report sufficiently address the Coeur d'Alene tribe's concerns and impacts associated with the proposal. One of the conditions that we felt was important to add to this report is, while we had limited information that the tribe provided, we added a condition of approval that reads, the applicant shall stop work and notify the Coeur d'Alene Tribe Historic Preservation Officer if any discovery is made of human remains or cultural items, including artifacts used for ceremonial purposes and everyday life, excuse me, during the construction activities of the project. Notification shall occur within 24 hours of discovery. While it's a very generic condition, we believe that it should adequately address anything that may come up in the future. And as I already stated in my presentation, the applicant did provide a very comprehensive compliance metrics to each of the conditions of approval that were imposed in 2000. And finally, one of the last things that I did want to point out is we just discovered that condition of approval 807 that was imposed by the Idaho Transportation Department had only 2 items, and there's a need for a 3rd item to be added to that condition, which requires a report on how the expansion of the site will impact the average daily trips for passenger and commercial vehicles on State Highway 95 and trips per day for the approach, including at peak hour during any construction of the expansion and at full operation. So that report will include both sections that address construction phase and the operation after the fact. And we find that that threshold shall be met at the time of issuance of a site disturbance permit. I have communicated this with the applicant, and they are on board of doing so. And that completes my presentation. I stand for any questions that you have for me at this time.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Finkel. I think if I have questions left over for you after the applicant, I'll ask them then. But thank you. Okay, so for the applicant, Mr. Phillips, are you going to present? Okay, all right, so.
Good evening, hearing examiner Granrath, John Phillips, Solid Waste Director for the record. Some of this information may be a little redundant. Vlad did a very good job in his presentation. As Kootenai County continues to grow, so does the amount of waste needing to be disposed of within our community. The Fighting Creek Farm landfill is anticipated to reach its currently permitted capacity in 2042. That's only 17 years from now. In order to keep up with the county's projected growth, we are at this time making the CUP request related to future expansion of the landfill. At this point, I'd like to introduce Jesse Tatum. Jesse is the professional engineer with Jacobs Engineering and is our project manager for this proposed expansion and modification. Jesse will be walking us through the details of this CUP request.
Read into the record is Exhibit HE 1001 for the PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good evening. For the record, Jesse Tatum with Jacobs Engineering out of Spokane, Washington. So, like JP said, some of this information may be a little redundant. Thanks to Vlad for his presentation. We'll kind of go through a little agenda here, giving a background of the facility and talking through the project need, the proposed project itself, and response to some of the comments that we've received. I also have Anna Iverson with me as well, another licensed civil engineer on the Jacobs team. So just a little background, we have a lot of solid waste folks who probably know this very well, but for the folks who aren't aware, I'm just going to give a little overview of landfill design for modern landfills. I mean, just to point out that they're highly engineered and regulated facilities. You know, they consist of a bottom liner that's laid down in the early stages of construction that's made out of high density polyethylene plastic to eliminate any water leaving the bottom of the facility. That is protected with, you know, a layer of protection surface for to protect that liner, and then any leachate collection. So leachate is you know, wastewater that's created when it comes in contact with the waste. So leachate collection systems within the landfill, and then also gas collection wells within the facility to control and collect gases that are generated during the decomposition of the waste. So that to say, there's a lot that goes into it. It's you know, operated as a you know, a phased approach. It's done, as you can kind of see with these blocks. That's how the landfills operate, and then they are covered daily with soil that then covers the daily workings of the waste placement. So this is done. You know, it's designed to protect groundwater, surface water, air emissions, and it's monitored to, you know, protect all of those environmental resources with regulations in place to do that. And so again, it's designed to collect and manage and treat and monitor the leachate and landfill gas produced. So again, maybe a little redundant with Vlad's presentation, but a little background on the facility. You know, most folks are aware generally where it's at. It's about 15 miles south of Coeur d'Alene along Highway 95. It's operated, owned, monitored, and maintained by the Solid Waste Department of Kootenai County. It's the only active landfill within the county. It's a fully lined and permitted and environmentally compliant facility that meets strict environmental regulations. It accepts and manages the disposal of waste for all of the 185,000 plus Kootenai County residents, as well as all the businesses within the county. And it's been in operation since May of 1993. Again, going over a little history of the CUP background for the facility. The original CUP
was just for the original landfill. I don't know if here, in the center of the site, this was done after the Ramsey landfill was closed in 1990 based on an order from the Panhandle Health District due to new regulations that were coming out, as that was an unlined landfill. So it was replaced with a modern lined landfill with the original CUP. A subsequent CUP was approved in 2001 for adding the east and the west cells. So currently, the east cell is in place today at the facility. The west cell is not present, but it is currently permitted. And so this CUP would include adding the south cell and modifications to the west cell to better integrate it and provide more waste storage capacity when tied with the south cell. So just modifying the footprint to better integrate it with the south cell. And as is mentioned, conditions from the previous CUPs have been met, or applicable ones are being carried over to this. As I mentioned, there's strict environmental regulations for landfills within the state of Idaho. The landfill is currently in compliance with all of its permits that are necessary for the facility. I've listed a few of them up here. These aren't all of the permits necessary, but it covers some of the main ones. It mentioned the conditions of approval from previous CUPs. Idaho Solid Waste Facilities Act is the main regulatory driver for the state of Idaho. It is regulated by Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, as well as a local health district, which is Panhandle Health District. They review the site certification, review and approve the landfill designs, operation, closure, and post-closure plans, as well as groundwater monitoring and methane monitoring programs, and provide regular inspections of the facilities. A couple other that IDEQ administer for the site. There's a Tier 1 operating permit for air emissions that the facility is currently in compliance with. There is a surface water discharge permit for the site for discharge of stormwater and groundwater. So water that has not come in contact with the waste is discharged back to the surface water and monitored to ensure that it meets the water quality criteria set by IDEQ. Idaho Department of Water Resources has issued 3 water rights for the site for industrial and fire protection uses. And then, as mentioned, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction over waters of the United States, and for the East Cell, there were wetlands for the East Cell as well, and a 404 permit and wetland mitigation plan were prepared and approved by the Corps for that project.
So can you elaborate a little bit more on the Army Corps of Engineer, that 404 permit? Just a little bit of elaboration about what that might mean and what the wetland mitigation, what it might look like. I understand it's a little bit in the future, but.
Yep. So that would be, one of the next steps that we will look into is have a consultation with the Walla Walla District of the Army Corps. We've already prepared a wetland delineation mapping the wetlands for this project. So we would prepare a permit for impacting those wetlands and prepare a mitigation plan for replacing in kind those wetlands. Was done on the previous project, a lot of the wetlands that would be created to mitigate the impacts would be used for stormwater discharge and treatment of stormwater leaving the site to create, natural habitat for animals, and replacing in kind in the same drainage, similar wetlands.
Okay, thanks.
And so a little bit about the life cycle analysis and the need for the project. We did a life cycle analysis in 2021 that shows that the current permitted landfill will be at capacity in, around 2042 to 2046, depending on, assumptions for waste increased, tonnage that's received at the facility. That increases as population growth increases for the county as well. So it seems like it's a long ways off, but being proactive and looking at long-term waste management strategies for the county is very important to do at this stage due to the long timetables for permitting that goes into siting a facility for waste storage and looking at potential other possibilities. And so on that, this is by far the best solution for long-term waste management for county residents. It is a very low cost to the residents of Kootenai County. The land is already owned by the county, and the majority of the infrastructure on site will be able to be reused for this facility, which a lot of it is already paid for. It's an environmentally compliant facility in a location that was cited back in 1989 for reasons that it was put there, that it's very hydrogeologically it's in a good hydrogeologic setting for a landfill, along with some other siting considerations. So being able to essentially use the facility that is in good environmental compliance and all of the associated infrastructure for the current facility make it a very low cost to expand the footprint of the landfill. Some other alternatives that haven't been looked into but have a lot of downsides with them are looking at new landfill siting elsewhere within the county. Back in 1989, when the original siting was done, all quadrants of the county were considered. There was 27 different sites that were analyzed as potential alternatives. This site was selected based on its hydrogeologic setting. Essentially, there's a lot of natural clay underneath the landfill, and then other impermeable soil layers beneath that provide kind of a secondary protection underneath the liner for any groundwater drainage and groundwater flow. So reopening that and looking at other siting is challenging, it's costly, and potentially contentious as well, and finding another suitable location would take a long time, and that's why we're looking at this this far in advance. If that were not possible, sending the waste to a private landfill would be extremely expensive for county residents, and the cost would be mandated by whoever's owning and operating that landfill. That also comes with some unpredictability long-term for cost and the availability for them to accept the waste in the future. Other potential waste management strategies in Spokane, we have an incinerator. Getting that sited and permitted would be an extreme challenge, as well as very, very expensive. So there's not a lot of other great options, and there's a very good option of utilizing the existing facility. So going a little bit over the proposed project, like we mentioned, the plan is to add the South Cell landfill area, some minor modifications to the footprint of the West Cell to better integrate with the South Cell. And it's important to note here that landfill operations are done in a phased approach. Right now you can kind of see over there, there's a few subsections in in the east cell, there's cell E1 and cell E2. We actually just worked with the county to construct cell E3, and so, waste placement is done in a kind of staggered approach. Expanding the landfill doesn't mean that the placement of waste is going to be a larger footprint. It's just going to allow for a place in the future to place it. So it's the scale of the operation will be similar to what it is today. It's just in a new location on site. And so again, for the South Cell area, the siting and hydrogeologic study for this were completed back in 2016. The existing landfill cells will be covered and eventually closed. New stormwater ponds will be constructed just for, to match the natural drainage of the area, and to, it would likely tie in with the wetland mitigation plan and to pre-treat stormwater before it leaves the site. And again, it's very important to know it's utilizing the existing infrastructure on site for leachate storage and treatment, the groundwater monitoring network on site, maintenance and administrative buildings, and one thing that we haven't noted, there's a gas to energy plant at the facility, so the landfill gas that's collected, about 2/3 of it is sent to the gas to energy plant where that gas is converted to electrical energy. I believe I've read it's enough energy for about 1,200 homes that it supplies. And so it would be able to utilize all of that existing infrastructure on site. And then it would extend the landfill life to approximately 2052 to 2060, depending on the assumed growth rate for waste placement. So approximately another 10 to 15 years of landfill life. Like Vlad mentioned, a number of agencies were requested to review the proposed project, listed here. Again, I thought it was important to note, Panhandle Health, when regulations changed back in the 90s, had an order to close the Ramsey landfill. Their comment here says that, they regulate operations of the Fighting Creek landfill. It has found the operations of the Kootenai County Solid Waste Department to consistently meet or exceed state of Idaho requirements. And I think that just goes to show the great job that JP and his team do at managing the landfill. And again, we've received some comments, and some concerns about the impacts that it would have to the environment. And I have stated on the record a response to those, and I believe those are included in the record. I'll kind of talk through them here as well. Groundwater protection and monitoring. As part of the Idaho Solid Waste Facilities Act, there's a groundwater monitoring plan in place, and a point of compliance well is established to monitor compliance with groundwater quality results. I have the conditions of approval kind of there in parentheses as well. There's also no extraction of groundwater. There are drains placed beneath the liner to drain naturally occurring groundwater that's intercepted, but there's no active extraction of groundwater. Wetland impact mitigation, we talked about. We will be having a consultation with the Walla Walla District of the Corps and going through a 404 permit and mitigation plan for any potential wetland impacts that can't be avoided. Stormwater management and runoff control. Again, construction for this project is far down the road, potentially 15 years down the road. But during that time, a stormwater pollution and prevention plan and construction general permit for stormwater discharges will be obtained, usually by the contractor. The discharge permit for surface water discharges will be obtained through IDEQ, either a modification to their existing MSGP, their multi-sector general permit, or a new permit through IDEQ will be obtained to ensure that any water discharged from the site would meet water quality that they specify. Endangered species protection, we've included in the record a no effect letter from our qualified biologist that the project has no effect on endangered species or critical habitat. There's also a condition in there that will follow Endangered Species Act regulations through U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. For air quality, a gas control and collection system will be installed with the landfill when it's constructed to collect landfill gases and to send them to the gas to energy facility to generate renewable energy from that. And that's part of the Idaho Solid Waste Facilities Act. There's in the operations plan that will be included in that, and in part of the design review. Again, with that the Idaho Solid Waste Facilities Act, there's also a methane monitoring program, and that will be extended to the south cell. That is currently being done for the existing landfill. That will be extended over to the lateral expansion. And then the IDEQ Tier 1 operating permit will be revised to include the west and south cells in that permit as well. There's some structural concerns that were presented. And this landfill is designed by licensed civil engineers with 3-to-1 horizontal to vertical side slopes. That is a very stable scenario. It is a very stable landfill. It's not located over any geologic hazard areas or fault zones, so there should be no cause for concerns for the stability of the landfill. Water rights, like I mentioned, there's no extraction of groundwater anticipated from beneath the landfill, and so there will be, no beyond the existing water rights are in place. There's anticipated to be no, extraction of groundwater beyond that would have any effects on others' water rights. Property values. The farm landfill has been in operation since 1993 and has been been planned since 1989. The landfill life will be extended approximately 10 to 15 years, but is already planned to be in place for 17 to 20 years. So the life will be extended, but like I mentioned, the operations will be at a similar scale to what they are today. There are conditions in place and proposed conditions to mitigate dust and noise impacts from the site, and there's natural topography, landscaping that the county has implemented, and buffer zones to mitigate any visual impacts from the facility, from any public road or right-of-way. Public health and wildlife concerns. There's a disease vector control plan that's incorporated with the operations plan. Part of that is for the daily cover. Like I mentioned, soil is placed over the active landfilling area that on a daily basis to limit exposure to wildlife. And also it's important to mention here for the leachate, which is the water that has come in contact with the waste. The county is currently getting ready to start a pilot study for an ultrafiltration reverse osmosis treatment system for that leachate. That's not something that's regulatory driven. It's something that the county is getting ahead of, anticipated regulatory changes, and will provide a very state-of-the-art treatment system for the leachate. And then cultural resources, a survey was completed by a senior archaeologist with Jacobs, as well as the tribe's historic preservation officer in 2021. There were some adjacent properties that were listed as eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, but those are separated by physical boundaries from the site. And the tribe's historic and preservation officer at the time said that they found nothing in their survey, and that the quote is that it was clear to construct. We're not to that point at this date, but nothing has changed since that time in terms of the project design and plan. And like Vlad mentioned, there's a condition in place to stop work upon any findings of cultural significance. So with that, I'll turn it back to JP, who can kind of wrap up.
Okay, so in closing, if approved, this requested CUP for lateral expansion and modification of the existing landfill will ultimately allow another 10 years plus of capacity, depending on our future growth, at this already permitted and environmentally compliant facility. This expansion does make a lot of sense, and if approved, will benefit 185,000 plus residents, as well as businesses within Kootenai County. Our citizens have already paid for much of this infrastructure, the necessary land, as well as the permitting efforts required to continue providing a very cost-effective and environmentally friendly and compliant means of waste disposal well into the future. Because of these reasons, the Solid Waste Department is requesting and recommending approval of CUP case number CUP 24-0011 regarding the planned future expansion of the Fighting Creek landfill.
Okay, thank you. I guess just one quick follow-up question before we get to public comment, and I think this is already sort of alluded to, but I want to have it, I guess, explicitly stated. It has to do with the modified condition of approval 8.07 that you're going to look into anticipated traffic increases, both for construction and for future use. You sort of alluded to it basically being at the same operational level, but can you just elaborate a little bit more on impacts to traffic?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the scale of the operation will be similar as it is today, and there's the condition of approval 8.07. The timing of that would be prior to the obtaining the site development permit. So basically, before construction, an assessment would be done for potential construction and operational traffic impacts to Highway 95. And so that report would be developed and worked with ITD prior to any expansion.
And that would be a decade or so from now when you're going to potentially do that work. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all the questions I have for you this time. I do reserve the right to ask you before we close out, but I'll move us on to public comment. So I do have, I think, some of your coworkers here that did sign up. And just to be clear again, the public comment period is the only time you'll have an opportunity to give public comment. Once I move past it, you won't. So I'm going to read your names, and even if you does not wish to speak, I'm going to ask you one last time, and it'll be your only opportunity to enter public comment into the record. So Doug Goodwin, do you wish to speak? Okay, thank you, sir. Angela Fraser or Fuser? Okay. Keith Fuser? Okay. Sorry if I'm getting your name wrong. Neil Maddox?
No, thank you.
Okay. William Marks?
No, thank you.
And Anna Iverson?
No, thank you.
All right. Is there anybody on Zoom who's in? Okay, just staff. All right. So I don't have to ask for the others. All right, and then I do neutral next. So Ed Joy, marked down neutral, and may wish to speak.
I'll speak.
All right, come on up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, my name's Edward Joy. The address is 20623 South Highway 95, Coeur d'Alene, 83814. I might mention that I am the immediate north neighbor of the landfill. I'm in the south half of Section 36, Township 49 North, 5 WBM. And the landfill northern boundary, I believe, is in, I'll get it here in a moment. Well, it's in Township 48, Section 2. The parcels I'm concerned about, and this is really a clarification, in this rather long list of parcels to be included, there are several that don't appear to me to be anywhere near the new proposed site. These are on the north end of the landfill property for the most part. They would include parcel 2, which includes lots 3 and 4. These are in Township 49, Range 5. Parcel 3, again in Township 48 North, Section 1. Parcel 4, these are in Section 1. I guess I should just read them. Lots 3 and 4, those are government lots. They're about 40 acres apiece. And then parcel 4, parcel 5, parcel 6, parcel 7, parcel 8, parcel 9, and parcel 10. Parcels 6 through 10 include the Spurley subdivision. That's property that the county purchased from Norm Spurley quite a few years ago. It's directly west of Highway 95. Anyway, those parcels are included in here, and I don't really know why, because they don't appear to be where this expansion is proposed, which is at the south and west part of the existing footprint. So I guess I'd like to have some clarification. Mr. Phillips has told me that they have no plans of expanding the landfill in that direction. I don't know if they would be getting cover from that property. The property alongside Highway 95 I know is not possible as landfill expansion because it's too close to the highway. It joins the highway. Some of it, well, I think it will remain a buffer zone. But I'm concerned that it's included in the parcels that are to be added to the landfill footprint. So those are the extent of my comments. I will make one maybe slightly humorous comment. I see the sign up there that says, "In God We Trust." My father's great comment, he had a sign on his desk that said, "In God We Trust, all others cash." I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I'll give an opportunity for the applicant to clarify some of that after the public comment, and hopefully they'll be able to address your comments / questions. Okay, and we've got two. We'll start with who we've got on top. Scott Fields, opposed and wishes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Scott Fields. I'm the Water Resource Program Manager with the Coeur d'Alene Tribe. Our address is P.O. Box 408850 A Street, Plummer, Idaho, 83851. And I'll just keep it short and sweet. Obviously, beforehand, I'd like to say thank you to JP and to Jesse. They were very helpful in getting us the information we requested. I do appreciate that, guys, as well as you, Vlad. We still have concerns and still remain opposed to this project, but we would like the opportunity to continue to work with the county to alleviate these concerns. I understand you have either written a response or are in process. We look forward to reviewing that. And yeah, unfortunately at this time we're not able to give our approval at this, but I think you know, we've had a good working relationship with the county. Hope to continue to do so and work through these issues as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. And Linda Joy, opposed, may wish to speak. Okay. And final confirmation about Zoom. Nobody's on there. Nobody just hopped on. Okay, and there's no one else here who I didn't call their name who wishes to speak. Okay, so with that, the public comment period is over. And this is the opportunity for applicants' rebuttal, and I hope they'll be able to give you some testimony on the different parcels that are included in the project site.
Good evening, Carl. John Phillips again for the record. For clarification for Mr. Ed Joy, I would like to, the county is willing to make this clarification and include in the conditions of the CUP that all parcels that are adjacent, that are proposed in this, in the CUP modification that are adjacent to the highway, we're willing to put in there that those would not be used for actual landfilling of waste anytime in the future. That would include, did you say this is the parcel number?
The top number is the AIN.
Okay, so would it be better if I read it by AIN? This would include AIN 198933, moving south 198934, moving south 198935, moving south 198936.
If I may chime in.
Please.
For the record, Vlad Finkel. My question would be, is it appropriate to put a stipulation that would prohibit those parcels that Mr. Phillips just read into the record from being utilized for part of the landfill? Or is it appropriate to remove them from the project area? And where would be the benefit in either of the two cases? Because typically when we process an application, it's important to understand that a project site is encumbered by the use that is generally expected on that site, whether it's a public utility facility or anything else. So is it appropriate to place a restriction, or just to simply say we would like to remove these parcels? They may be under the ownership of the solid waste, but have them removed from the project site.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I'll chime in. David Callahan, Community Development Director. They are not appropriate to be removed. They are part of the site. I think the clarification we need from Director JP is, it sounds to me like these are buffer parcels, and he just read into the record they're not going to be used as part of the conditional use permit. So in my view, as long as there's clarity that these are not being used for any expansion now or in the future, that's all we need.
Yeah, yes. Again, John Phillips for the record. So to be clear, what I stated was not to be used for actual landfilling of waste. What I mean by that is I do not want to tie the hands of the county commissioners or the public in the future to use that for other means such as roadways, buildings, or infrastructure necessary for the management of solid waste. But we would not design any landfill or plan on putting liner down or actual waste in those areas.
Okay, and I guess also to be clear, if you, in the future, if you wanted to do a different expansion into a part of the project site not depicted here, you would have to get a new CUP modification.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So hopefully to Mr. Joy, and maybe, yeah, I shouldn't testify, but maybe you can expand a little bit on how the CUP constrains their use of the site, and it's constrained to their application, what they're intending to do in this drawing. If they want to move, if they decide I want to move part of the operation to a different part of the parcel, how would that work?
The easy way to think of this tonight is only the portions that are shown on the screen are being permitted. Nothing else may be used without going back through another CUP amendment.
Director Callahan, so we would, the hearing examiner would add a condition of approval to say that the parcels listed by Director Phillips are restricted from being used for landfilling purposes. That
At
would be
this
as simple
time.
as that. Thank you.
Okay. Can I get you to write down those parcel numbers for me before we leave, and I'll have it as one of the exhibits that'll go into the record. I didn't write them down, so instead of me having to go back and listen and get the numbers, can you just quickly jot those down and we'll enter it as one of the exhibits?
Yeah,
To make it easier for me to
yeah, before
add
then,
that condition.
just hand them to the clerk.
Yes, please.
That'll be HE 1002.
Okay. Well, I have no further questions of staff or the applicant. Anything else from staff, Mr. Finkel? If you would like to give any further testimony, now's your chance. Oh, did you wish to give any further rebuttal testimony?
In regards to the comments provided by the tribe.
The Kootenai County Solid Waste is always willing to work with any party that wants to contact us and discuss any of this.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll take those AIN numbers, and I'll probably be in communication with either Vlad or Mr. Finkel or Mr. Callahan to get a proper condition drafted. But otherwise, that is going to conclude tonight's hearing. That is going to be the last bit of our record. Otherwise, now at 7:04, the record is closed, and we are adjourned.